This show is sponsored by Mighty Capital, the go-to venture capital firm for product-first companies like Airbnb and Amplitude. Learn why they are dubbed the best value for the dollar invested at mighty.capital. I'm SC Moadi, founder and chair of Products That Count, a 501c3 nonprofit engaging over 500,000 product managers. Our mission is simple: help you build great products through groundbreaking research, prestigious awards, and top-notch programming like this award-winning Top 1% podcast. Whether you're aiming to boost your career or turn your product team into a competitive advantage, this is your gateway. Visit productsthatcount.org and begin your product leadership journey. This particular series is hosted by one of the first chief product officers in the world, Renee Niemi, and each episode is a masterclass in product leadership. Renee, over to you.
Hello, today I have with me Mike Vigue. He is the former chief product officer at Finastra. So first of all, Mike, I'd love to welcome you and thank you for sitting down with me today, and congratulations on being selected as one of the top chief product officers of 2024.
Thank you, Renee. So happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'm really looking forward to diving in and getting to know you a little bit better. But before I do that, why don't we just start 60 seconds or less? Why don't you share a little bit about you, your role at Finastra, and what Finastra does for those who don't know?
Sure. I think the easiest way to say it is I've been in payments my entire career, which spans about 30 years. It's probably part of my DNA at this point. About a little over a year ago, I joined Finastra to become the chief product officer of their payments business. And what they do is they service banks of all sizes, from small community banks up until some of the largest banks in the world that you would know by name. And they provide back office payment hubs. So if you move money from one bank to another, it's very likely that somewhere along the line your transactions went through Finastra software.
Good to know. Good to know. So I'd love to kind of dive in and get to understand your journey to the top a little bit better. I know for me anyway that, when I, look at my past, there have been so many positive influences, both direct and indirect, by the way, on particular individuals. Was there any one person who had a lot of influence on your work and either the way you do your work or your inspiration? Would love to hear the story.
Sure. I don't think I could narrow it down to one. I'd probably have to name two. Yeah. First of all, within my career, I spent a significant amount of time in a company called Bottomline Technologies, and their CEO's name was Rob Everly, and he was CEO. I met him actually on his first day at Bottomline, and I had no idea he was going to become the CEO. So it was a pretty good relationship to build. We became friends over the years. And he just had a lot of influence on me on the way that he thought and the way that he looked at things. And he was a great speaker and a motivational leader. And he always constantly said, how does the customer look at it? Looks at it from the customer's eyes, not just think about what the customer's thinking, be the customer. If you are in the customer's shoes, what is it that is worrying you every day? What is it that you're waking up thinking about? How do you look at our software? How do we impact you? How does our company impact you as a customer? And that had a lot of impact on me over the years, as I would constantly kind of try to remove myself and think about that in order to decide how I would do my job better. And then, of course, and this one's probably used a lot, I'd say the second person that had a lot of influence on me is probably one of the greatest product leaders of all times, which would be Steve Jobs. And I kind of put the two together. I kind of put, my personal relationship with a man I knew and an idol or an icon, if you will, of somebody who I respected greatly in our industry. And I would meld those two together and try to think about the type of product that I wanted to be, the type of product leader that I wanted to be. And I just thought Steve Jobs and some of the simplistic attitude he took towards things. I saw him do a presentation one time, and he said, I want to talk to you about three things today. And everybody spends tons of times doing slides. And he hit the button on his first slide. It was just a plain white slide with a big number 1. And I was like, that's what a presentation is, right? You're supposed to be talking to people, and you want them to listen to what you're saying and not looking at your slides. And I loved some of the, he had great expressions over the years, and just his thought process as he went into how he built things and the type of leader he was. I found it inspirational. And between him and Rob, I think I had a pretty good basis of people to look up to, and I hope that I've done a decent job in trying to mimic the behaviors from them that I respected.
Yeah. So how would you, it's kind of a very interesting mix because, somebody who, some people who have studied Steve Jobs says, never listen to the customer. And so you were inspired by somebody who was always kind of customer centric and empathetic with somebody who was like incredibly inspirational. So bring that into the real world. Do you have a story on like how you were able to take both of those inspirations through your career?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of stories. So the interesting thing is I started my career with about 12 years in what's solutions engineering. So I was the other 2 legs of a 4-legged sales call. So I was in no less than 1,000 AP, finance, payroll departments, listening to people talk about their everyday problems. And I remember, so I could almost pick out what they were going to say just by looking and getting an overview before. Well, we're going to talk to this customer about this, that, and the other. Okay, I got a pretty good idea of where this conversation is going to go. But I think out of every call, I picked up something new. I remember one customer, for example, said to us, it was a client of the company I worked for at the time, and they they were on a really bespoke implementation of the software, and they said, we should not have customized the application to the point that we can't upgrade it. And then he said, but you guys shouldn't have let us. And I thought that was that was very insightful. So now when I went back to the services department and I said, well, why did you do that? And because that's what they asked for. I said, that's not necessarily an answer to the question. It's our job. And I think what Steve Jobs actually said was you could hear 1,000, you could talk to, I don't remember it word for word, but you could talk to 1,000 customers and they'd still never tell you an iPhone. Your job is to listen to customers, what the customers want, and then give them what they really want. And that is sort of the perspective that's a real life situation where I looked at it and I said, okay, I just connected some dots there and I can really get that. Because the customer may want exactly what they have today, but that's because that's all that they know. If you can show them something better or show them a world or show them how some of their decisions, frankly, might impact them in a negative way down the road, then you can actually, your job isn't to sit there and you're not taking an order at a restaurant. Your job is to guide the customer into the best solution and the right solution for them. And I think as product leaders, we need to always remember that we have to be taking our customers on a journey, and it requires listening to them, but it doesn't require doing everything. It doesn't require taking orders from them.
Yeah, so many great analogies here. The other thing that strikes me as I listen to you speaking is there is a big difference between B2B and consumer. Obviously, Steve spent his time developing and leading consumer-like companies. However, users are B2B's consumer, right? And if you're not solving for, the decision maker, the B2B decision maker and the B2B user, then you're also going to be missing out. And a lot of those simplicity, principles kind of apply. So it's just really interesting analogies, and I love the 2 viewpoints that you bring up here.
Yeah, in my space, it used to be acceptable that people would expect the software to be hard to use. And that, because I've been in the space since the early 90s, right? And they kind of expected that. And then somewhere along the way, the user experience became the product. The user experience is the product. And if you have a bad user experience, they're not going to use the product. And that's kind of what I told my team just recently. I said, look, we can build the best product in the world, but if nobody's going to use it, then nobody's ever going to know it. So it's really about that first layer. I actually got it wrong one point in my career on that. As it was jumping that point between, business users expecting that consumer experience in their business applications. I relied on third-party organization one time. We brought some software that we had OEM'd in, and we made that our dashboard. And you could do really, really cool things with it. You could move everything around. You could create charts and graphs, et cetera. But you had to be a pretty powerful PC user in order to be able to understand their tools. And a lot of our users weren't. And it didn't land very well. I mean, it probably stands out as probably one of the times in which I said, okay, I definitely didn't get it right here. And that was definitely a learning experience for me. It's also when we started developing and I added to the process a lot, because I built the process up over the years of doing this. And one of the things, that's where I really honed in on user experience testing. We used to do things like Test Fest, where you bring customers and services and support people to actually use stuff now. And that was prior to that. And frankly, it was a learning experience for me, but it's along the lines of what you just said. I brought my daughter to work with me one time when she was like 9 years old. And I put her in front of instead of the cash management application we had built. She goes, "What are you doing, Dad?" I said, "Well, if you're going to come to work with me, you're going to work." And she said, "Okay." I said, "I want you to be a QA tester for today. You're going to use this software and tell me whether or not you can use it." Now, she's 9 or 10 years old. And she goes, "What's a beneficiary, Dad?" And I said, "That's the person you're trying to pay." She goes, "Then why doesn't it just say that?" That's another thing. So out of the most of babes, it kind of stuck to me along those lines. I'm like, it's a very interesting perspective. I don't think there's 9-year-olds entering in sophisticated wire transactions, but you know what? The easier we make make our application to use, the better off everybody is. So, I digress.
I love that. The younger they are, the simpler they are, right? It just comes back to that simple mindset. Excellent. Great stories there. So when you kind of look at, we all, have strengths and weaknesses, but we're going to focus on your strengths for a moment. What would you say your, leadership CPO superpower is, and what has propelled you to the top of not just product management, but product management leadership?
I would say two things. I would say, first of all, one thing that I've learned over my career, just as people in general, is people people can sniff out or tell when you're not being sincere. And I think it's very important as a leader to remember that you're not just leading people. And frankly, actually, my perspective has always been that the people that work for me don't work for me. I work for them. And the first question I ask a lot of times when I'm having one-on-ones with people is, are you having fun? Are you enjoying what you do? Are you, how is everything? Because you spend so much of your time in your career. And I'm passionate about what I do, and I want everybody else to be passionate about it too, because that's what's going to make somebody want to stay. But if you're not enjoying what you do, then nobody wins. Because you're not going to get the best output from somebody. They're not going to be happy. They might not want to stay. So I think, first of all, one of the things that I've found over the years is just really being true to who you are and transparent as to who you are, and treating the people that work for you like it's your job to be there for them. And I will look good if they are doing great jobs. That's my perspective. I think the manager gets elevated with a strong team. So build a strong team. I think the second part of that is, from a product management perspective, I believe that product management is a science. It's not an art, it's a science. And there is a real way to do product management, and you can actually step into a role. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room about the topic that it is that you're managing. What you have to do is you have to bring the smartest people with you, but you also have to have a really strong process in order to be able to do this. And you need to be on time, on quality, on budget, on scope with each of your releases, because the one thing about product management, its friend, is confidence. People need to be confident in what you're saying and what you're doing is the right way forward. And there's a way to do that to ensure that those four things are hit every time. Because the counter side to product management is, the enemy of it is surprises. And they happen all the time. That's why the agile development methodology is taken off. It's basically to absorb surprises.
Right.
And as a product manager, you can do the same thing. So, for example, never commit 100% of your scope in a release. You commit 75% of your scope, and the other part of it, you may, even if you talk about it, it's stretch activities, et cetera. That way, you're never overcommitting. Or I always leave, and I don't tell anybody this, I always leave a little bit of slush fund sitting on the side. If my story point is
Uh-oh.
300 story points for next release, I only tell people 250 and keep 50 because I know stuff's going to happen. But you can't let that secret get out too far, because if they know it's there, they spend it before they got it.
Yeah. But by the way, that's just smart management. You always, I mean, if the data, to your point, if the data shows that 90% of your projects go over budget, then you have to set money aside or you will be infinitely over budget.
I think the best product, if when you have confidence in a product leader, then that person's done his job. Because if you don't, and the way to do that is to say what you're going to do and do what you said.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. I love that. Can I debate a topic with you? This notion of product management being science.
Sure.
I believe it's a mix of science and art. Because if it was pure science, we could just, throw an AI bot in the middle of what we're doing and they could get it done. Argue that point for me.
Well, I didn't say it was just science, but I say it's definitely more science than art. But
There
you
we
have
go.
a very good point. See, and perhaps I'm a bit biased because I mentioned that I started my career by spending time in front of 1,000 AP finance professionals, et cetera. So it does come over time. But if you think about it, and I had this discussion with somebody I was trying to bring onto my team in the company someday. He's, I don't know the most about payments. And I said, you don't have to know the most about payments. You have to surround yourself with the people that know a lot about payments. So for that reason, I don't think a bot or an AI could take over. So there is some art, but if you are the product leader, you can step into a role that where you don't know the subject matter as well and haven't been doing it for 30 years, as long as you know who which people to trust. So there, you do have to have the subject matter experts surrounding you or in there. But there's been tons of situations where I've walked into a room and I don't have that subject matter expertise, but I'm still responsible for leading us to the right decision. But I have to know who I'm listening to. So for that, I'm not going to debate against that. I'm going to support it, but probably from a different perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that. And just to lean in a little bit and support the broader point of the science element of product management, there are proven process elements that when implemented, consistently, you will get consistently good results. And so to that element, there is a science. So, and a lot of people would debate whether or not you have to be a subject matter expert. I fall in the same camp as you do, where I don't think you need to be a subject matter expert. I think you need to be a really good listener. I think you need an element of intuition. And I think you need to be willing to and able to recruit people to bring that subject matter experts. And you have to be able to follow a process within reason. So
I couldn't agree more. I think that's great. I'd add maybe one more to say you also have to continuously test your hypotheses.
yes, because things change sometimes right in the middle of a project, right?
Yep.
I agree. Excellent. So from what would you say is one best practice? I want to kind of get tangible for a second. What's your favorite best practice that you deploy that you think has just a massive impact on, well, obviously your career, but probably your team as well?
Test Fest, what we call Test Fest. It might have a better name for it than that, but I really like it because another philosophy that I have is if you build a product, you have to deliver the whole product. So many people look at product as from when you start coding to when you're done coding or when you're done testing. I don't know. There's so much in front of that, so much behind it, so much in the middle and so much behind it. You need a complete go-to-market governance process, right? So that would be that. I'm not going to call that out as a best practice because frankly, that should be the Bible. for how you're going to.
Table
I think
stakes,
it's a
right?
recipe for how you're going to bake the cake. But within that, my special ingredient would be test fest, because along the way, if you're going to develop the whole product, services needs to know how to implement it, sales needs to know how to sell it, and support needs to know how to support it. If those three things don't happen, it doesn't matter. You get the best product in the world. Nobody's going to buy it. Nobody's going to be able to implement it. Nobody's going to be able to support it. So there's an aspect called test fest, which towards the end, as we're starting to get into some of the hardening and freeze phases of the release, we bring in stakeholders, not just stakeholders, but anybody who wants to be there for half a day. We would set up use cases and user stories and populate the demo systems. And this is your time to speak. This is your speak now or forever hold your peace moment, right? So if you're because at the end of the day, when we get to the go no go decisions at the end, it's not just product and development making it. It's services at the table, supports at the table, and sales is at the table. So I expected those people that have sat down, they banged on the release, they see what it is, the scope is, they play with it for a little while. If they have issues, we take those issues, we put them in, we triage them, we come back. But at the end of the day, what should come out a couple of weeks after that is basically a rubber stamp go no go decision where everybody feels good about that you said what you were going to do and you did what you said, and they support it, and they know that the documentation is there, et cetera. And that, again, services can implement it, support can support it, sales can sell it.
Yeah, I love that. And I have to imagine that there have been cases where something comes out of that you hadn't thought about. Do you have any good stories on things that you found that you probably would have shipped with and would have created a disaster?
Let me think. Well, I mean, there was always. Well, the nice thing about that, particularly when you get services or support, is they're thinking about the last customer or the last two customers that they implemented with. So I don't think, I don't think there's anything that would come out as a disaster. And frankly, if there was, I would be saying, okay, how did we not know this further up the chain? But there
Right.
are definitely, hey, such and such customer, when they go to use this feature, you do know that this is what they do, which is a little bit different. I had an experience a few years ago where I got to go, and I won't name, large investment firm. And I went to go and I visited them in Texas with our UI guy. And they said, "Do you know what your last release did to my day?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, I have to enter in the bit codes for Swift, and I copy them from here, and I right click over on this screen here and paste them in there. And because you did something different, I now have to retype them, and it takes me, and they're 8 characters long, and it takes me, 5 times longer to enter in a payment transaction than it used to. Well, maybe not 5 times, but a little bit longer. The smallest things. Now, I got that aspect by being able to visit that investment firm and watching them a day in a life, which was invaluable, by the way. But I can't be at every single one of our customers. So the support and services team could bring those examples to me. And there are small little changes where we've made as a result of that, saying, hey, customer A is not going to like that because of this feature. So
Nice.
no disasters avoided, but definitely some probably uncomfortable conversations that I think we might have had.
Yeah, and I love that example because when you think about it, even though that seems minor, I've been on the
Yeah.
receiving side of something very similar with two-factor authentication, and it is highly annoying and highly unproductive, and
Oh,
and the worst thing you could do is like annoy your users, right? You'll lose their loyalty.
yeah.
Yeah, excellent example.
That's because you have a Mac, by the way. You know that, right? When you do that, it shows that on the screen.
Oh, I didn't even see it. Did it do
Yeah,
that?
it did. It
Yeah.
popped up the thumbs up.
Yeah. I have to be careful because otherwise I'll get some really cool. Anyways, I can never make it do it on purpose. Um, back, back to the interview. Uh, what is the best customer meeting you ever had? The most memorable customer meeting you've ever had?
The most memorable customer meeting. Well, the one with that investment firm where I told you that they said you should have let us build that product was interesting. So okay, so I had a large bank in Australia that we were supporting a number of years ago, and they had they brought me on. So it was a white labeled situation, right? So they brought me on a road show to New Zealand and all around Australia to some of their customers. So frankly, first of all, it was a different cultural experience for me, which is great. But secondly, I got to go to what they did is they brought 4 or 5 customers in for five or different city, 5 or 6 different cities. So I got to visit to meet with 30 or 30 to 35 Australia and New Zealand corporate customers of this bank, and basically listen to what what their experiences were. And that's kind of was eye-opening for me from a number of different perspectives, because frankly it was very interesting to see how a different area of the world uses your application, even down to some of the words that were in it, because they meant, I remember I used a phrase in a meeting, and the guy the bank was in the bank in the room going like this. I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "That means something a lot different here, Mike." But at the end of the meeting, what I actually got out of it again was mostly all usability stuff. It's how and you hit upon it earlier, how the smallest changes that we make at times. And when people talk about backwards compatibility, sometimes they're really putting a lot in there. But what they're actually talking about is sometimes that's what they're talking about most of the times. The smallest change that you make can have the largest impact to people. And what we had done in that last release was we added a lot of security into the system based on feedback from our customers that they wanted to be able to have this option and that option. Well, it turned into a monster of a process to set up a profile for somebody. So there wasn't enough wizards around it, et cetera. So I just think over the years, and I've had a lot of interesting meetings like that, but for the most part, it's just seeing again how the smallest changes, the littlest impacts, the things that you think are small can have such a big impact on somebody's work life. And when I noticed, the other thing that came out of those meetings, and I went back and I told my team this, and they were devastated. I said, remember, at the end of the day, we provide payment systems to banks that their small business and corporate customers use. And you know what the small business user wants out of our software? And they said, what? I said, to not be in it. They want to get in and out of it as soon as a builder spends his entire day giving quotes and working on and building. At the end of the day, the last thing he wants to do is his accounting. He wants to be in and out of our software as fast as possible. So we spend our lives and our passions and pour it into the software so that people like my brother, who's a builder, can spend 5 minutes or less in the application. That's his goal. And if you've allowed him to get in and out of there as fast as possible, we've actually done our jobs, even though that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes that simplicity, shortest number of clicks wins. Great stories. We all have our why. We all have our motivation. What's your motivation to do great work?
Well, first of all, I am highly competitive. I love to win. Being in the I was never in I did have a sales management role before, but when I was the other 2 legs of a 4-legged sales call, nothing better than winning a big deal. And I know that the product has a lot to do in that. I want to work for the best. So in payments is my passion, and I want to work for the best payments company. I want to build the best software. I want it to be no decision when somebody sees something that I've built or had a hand in building. And I've just always been driven that way. And it comes a lot from my grandfather. I think my grandfather was a hard as nails construction worker, World War II vet. And he taught me early on he goes, Mike, I don't care what you do in this life. It doesn't matter if you pick up garbage or if you're president of the United States, whatever you're going to do, whatever you choose to do it to the best of your ability. I used that example of my son one time. We went to a restaurant and the food was horrible. I said, if I was going to cook food for a living, I would cook every meal like I wanted to eat it. And I said, and my grandfather taught me that, and that's, I don't know if it's a lame answer, but it's the truth. I get motivated because I want to if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well.
Yeah. And why do you want to do it well?
Because it gives, you know why I want to do it well? Because to me, there's no other way to do it. Why do it? Why, if you're not going to do it well, don't do it at all. Why do it?
Yeah. I love that. When I think about your answer on this one, I get it. If you're, my mom used to have this thing. It's like, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. It's so funny when you have like conversations like that, like, you know, the little voices from your past come back, and it's so true, right?
Yeah, I used to build chimneys when I was a young guy. I was a mason tender, working stonework for while I was in and out of college to make money. And every time, and he taught me, they're not just rocks stacked on top of each other. There's an art to it. And then we would get fancy, and I would put things behind it sometimes because those things could be there for 150 years, and it would be neat if you were taking one down to be able to find something. He said, "Why are you doing it?" I said, "Just because I like the idea someday of somebody finding this, and I'm so proud of what it is that we built here." And I just and I would leave notes in them sometimes again, because if even as he did most of the work, I just hauled all the stuff up there. But again, if you're gonna, I just don't know how to do anything other. If I don't know how to do, I don't know how to do things in a way in which I don't care about the outcome, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Well, great. So many great lessons in here and stories, Mike. It's been so much fun. Unfortunately, we are back down to our last question.
Okay.
And I would be remiss. I can't have a conversation with a chief product officer in 2024 without bringing up the topic of AI. Specifically, I'd love your view on the impact of AI in the function of product management, especially in the short term.
Okay. So, first of all, I think AI will be as impactful to our world as the Industrial Revolution was. I think it's going to free up time to do so many more things, that the monotonous tasks, why not let the computers do them? But I think its role in product management could be in a couple of different manners. So, for example, actually at Finastra, they had a Shark Tank exercise in January, and we pitched, and all the CPOs from the different business units pitched an idea, and the winner actually got to build it, which they picked my idea. Now, I'm not sure if that was actually a good thing, because I'm now now everybody's watching me build it. But so there are two elements to it. I think there's usage in what you do, and there's usage and maybe how you do it. So, for example, within the organization, various organizations I've worked in, there's always thought of the monolith, right? I've got a lot of customers that are on large behemoth implementations because that have lived over years. 20-year customer. Imagine a back office payment hub for a bank that bought it 20 years ago. It evolves over time and it turns into this thing. So how do you break that monolith? Well, I do think from a technology perspective, AI can help with code refactoring. It can help with breaking things into microservices. Now, it's not going to do all the work for us, but at the end of the day, somebody told me one time, "Do you think developers like to code?" No, they like to build and design. If something else can code for them, why not let them code for them? So I think its impact will be felt there. And I also think we should be thinking about how we're going to do it within our application. So, for example, the most expensive transactions in the payment space are those that need repair, that are broken. You know, Nacho will tell you it's somewhere 3%. I think Swift says 4.7%, but somewhere between 2 and 5% of transactions fail. Those are the ones that cost the most money because somebody's usually on the phone fixing them, figuring out what's wrong. So the idea that we pitched in January was to have AI be able to go in and recommend the changes based on the information that it's had before or other things that it can see or call out to. And basically anything that anything that AI could recommend for a fix would take out virtually 100% of the cost. And we estimated it to probably be a $4 to $5 million cost savings in certain situations, within certain products that we have at Finastra. So I think to answer your question, in a very elongated way, is it depends on whether or not you're talking about how we do our jobs or what our jobs are. So I think that it will be used in both ways. I can see us using it to actually help develop our solutions faster, and I can see it in a way in which it will actually be used within our solutions to provide more value to our customers.
You know, it's funny as I'm listening to you tell this story. You know, one of the most common questions I used to get asked by my team was, "Can I hire an assistant to take care of a lot of this non-value add work so that I can focus on the more strategic work?" And I feel like AI is now that assistant that they can hire.
I love Microsoft's name for it, Copilot.
Copilot's
Fantastic,
great.
right? We're still the pilots. But if you turn Copilot on, for example, if you turn it on to this recording, it would summarize the notes and send the notes out afterwards if you haven't used it yet, which is brilliant. Because the last thing I want to do is get off an hour-long call and have to spend 10 minutes typing up what people said. So I completely agree with that. That's a great analogy.
I agree. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you, Mike. It's been so much fun getting to know you a little bit better, hearing your stories. There's lots of good ones in there. And again, congratulations on being a finalist of the top CPO this year.
Thank you, Renee. It's a pleasure talking to you.
This is SC Moadi again, founder and chair of Products That Count. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform, including Spotify and Apple. And please check out our other resources at productsthatcount.org. They're designed to accelerate your product career and make product the most important function in business. Until soon.